What is up, everybody? Welcome into our Airbnb right down the street from Paddington Station in London, England. Wow.
Crazy.
Bear with us for this episode because we're both absolutely exhausted. We got no sleep on the plane last night. It was a bit of a dice roll. We tried to get some sleep, and some people were. Listen, let's get into that. Actually, why don't we start there with the decorum on an international flight? We're about to get the lights go off. We're about to crash into sleep, and all of a sudden, this woman starts screaming a conversation from her seat on the left side of the plate to like the middle 3-seated row. And I'm like, wow, are they going to is she going to be doing this for a while? Ryan, that conversation went on for, I'm not kidding, like an hour and a half. Meanwhile, halfway through, she gets up and starts stretching. I'm all for it. It's a long flight. Got to get your stretches in. Great. Start stretching. I couldn't sleep because they were she was screaming. The other people were whispering. She was screaming. So I decided to put on a movie. I put on a movie. She's up standing in front of my seat, and she puts her hand on the headrest of the person sitting in front of me, and her hand is covering my movie. So now she has me up and now disrupting my viewing experience. Suffice to say, I did not get very much sleep.
Yeah, no, I can tell you I had less than 30 minutes sleep. I cannot get comfortable on flights. It just doesn't work for me. Yeah, I got a famous Matt Parrino annoyed face. Like he turned around at one point to look at me, gave me that face like, what is going on here? I'm about to blow up, not really, but he was getting angry and I could tell. For me, I had two stories. The guy in front of me, and no judgment-free zone. He watched Big George Foreman 3 times in a row on this flight. This was about an 8-hour flight, and no, it was not George Foreman. Like the only person I think would watch that movie 3 times in a row would be George Foreman. It was just some random dude. Must have been a big boxing fan. Maybe fell asleep a few times during it. And then my biggest pet peeve, Matt, 8-hour flight. I am in row 37. It's the last true row where you have 3 by 3 by 3 of the entire airplane. The second that plane stops taxiing, this guy in the next section of 37 gets his stuff out immediately and starts standing right next to me, like right in my, right next to my face. You're not going anywhere, buddy. Knock it off.
I'm totally with you. That's one of my least favorite things that people do on airplanes. Now, if you had to catch a flight, because our flight was a delay going to Chicago, I understand that. But yeah, let's have some decorum. Anyway, we're going to talk to you about our first day in London, obviously here today. We got a lot of plans over the next couple of days. We're going to get into some Bills topics on this afternoon show, where most of you are watching. It's very much night here in London. And Shout It, as always, is brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. Are you ready for Slider Sunday? Every time you visit slidersunday.com, you have a chance to win free products, brand swag, tailgating gear, trips, and much more. One chance per day, no purchase necessary. It is a given. You always have to make Tops Friendly Markets a part of your game day. All right. So let's get started with, and shout out to Elliot, everybody watching live on YouTube. Thank you. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. He said your hair never takes a day off. This is actually, I did this hair. When do we leave? Tuesday morning?
Early Tuesday morning.
I did this hair at 3:00 on Monday. Slept on it Monday night. Flew internationally. And now I'm probably going to jump in the shower at 9 or 10 o'clock because I just feel gross. So that's be the first time I touched it. So it's holding up.
It's holding up really, really well.
You need a shick. You need a shick job.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And you also you tried Caitlin's pillow thing on the flight, and that didn't mess up the hair either. I mean,
it did, but I brought it back.
Okay, all right, it's holding up very strong.
Yeah, did I explain this in the podcast already?
No,
because I was so excited about it. It's like oh yeah, I did it on Danger and Battaglia. It's like a travel pillow tower where you can put your arms through it and then lean your head on the top of it and fall asleep. I couldn't find a comfortable position with my back though, so I didn't get full utilization of it. So TBD. We'll give it another whirl at some point. All right. So Josh Allen AFC Offensive Player of the Week for the second time this season. He did it against the Raiders a couple of weeks ago. Not a surprise. I mean, he went out there against the Dolphins team and was absolutely dominant. Through the air, 4 touchdowns, getting Stephon Diggs involved. And actually, Josh was just at the podium in Buffalo and said that he thought that Diggs should have gotten the award. But we were talking about some of the crazy numbers, that Josh Allen has put up against the Dolphins. What throw it on people? Like, how many of his player of the weeks have been against the Dolphins?
Well, so I think he's actually won the award 11 or 12 times now. He's won it 5. But he's only played the Dolphins 11 times in his career, and 5 of those performances have gone for player of the week. And I think maybe one of them is also the playoff game too, because why would or maybe not, because it's 11. They've played once this regular season, but you're almost batting 500 for Josh Allen to win player of the week for the AFC offensive player against Miami. So it kind of just shows his dominance over the years, how he's always had their number, and it continued again here in week 4.
There's this cool new feature on Twitter. When you're live streaming a video, it comes up at the top of your app in like a little pink box, almost like it was like when Twitter Spaces first came out. Like they put those at the top of the page. I like that feature. I'm retweeting it over there right now. So I wanted to start with Josh and where he sits going into week 5 here, because I know yours did. My inbox blew up after that game against the Miami Dolphins, and he's now the front runner for the MVP. 4 weeks into the season, we're right back in that same space we were a year ago, where he comes out against the Rams, completely dominates, takes over a couple of games, puts up big numbers, and now it's like, is this finally the year? What do you think about him being there, first and foremost? Like, do you feel like he's definitively, the front runner ahead of anybody else? And then how do you feel like he's better positioned to handle that with this offense this year as maybe compared to last year? And was it a case of not being able to handle it well, where maybe things fell off the tracks a little bit?
Yeah, so first and foremost, right now I have him 1A, 1B with Christian McCaffrey. And McCaffrey's it's a tough sell for a running back to win MVP in today's day and age, but he's been dominant. He's coming off of a 4 touchdown performance with the 49ers and been a difference maker on this team. Brock Purdy's a very good game manager. He's done a lot of really good things where that offense goes ever since they were able to acquire Christian McCaffrey last year. So that's where I kind of have them. In terms of Allen right now, yeah, definitely the front runner in the AFC, definitely the front runner overall, probably in the league, like I said. One area where I think he's better off this year than he's been in year past in the MVP race is the offensive line play. I think that sometimes he's had to create on his own, and sometimes it's a beautiful chaos that goes really, really well, and you see the highlights over and over again. But other times it's performances where he makes those mistakes and he has the turnovers. And the way this line has been holding up over the last 3 weeks, especially, they had some struggles against the Jets. The way they've been holding up the last 3 weeks, it's been able to give Josh Allen time to scan the field. It's been time to let him hit those quick hitters, though, as well. So it's been a mix, but I think where the offensive line is right now, Matt, it's going to help him now and in the future in this MVP race.
I think back to that Patriots game. I think it was it 19 when he threw the 3 interceptions? It was just, he'd probably put it in a handful of his worst games that he's ever played in the pros. And I think that Jets game in week 1, I'd also put that in that pot. And that was scary. Like, I remember we did a post-game podcast talking about, do the Bills have a Josh Allen problem? And both of us ultimately said no. It was a 1-game situation against a defense that, has played well against Josh Allen over the course of his career. But like, it was troubling that he comes into the season, was so upfront about the things that he needed not to do, and then went out and did the exact opposite of everything that he said that he was going to do. But to me, the way that he's responded and the way that he's playing over the last 3 weeks, it's not just the numbers. It's not the production. It's not the way that he's running the offense. It's the way that Ken Dorsey is moving him around. He's lining him up under center. He's asking him to play shotgun. He's asking him to do play action. He's asking him to make plays off schedule, like he usually does. I mean, that pass to Stephon Diggs, where I think it was a couple weeks ago, where he kind of scooted off to the right and then threw a scramble drill after that and found Diggs 40 yards down the field. You're still going to have that as part of his game. I think what he's demonstrated is, number one, the ability to reset after a bad performance, which you have to do and have multiple bad games. Like Tua's coming off of not what I would call a bad game.
No, statistically very strong.
Exactly. It was a fine statistical performance, but you can't have 2 or 3 ho-hum games in a row if you want to take a shot, a true shot at MVP. And what else is helping the Bills is, like, I think that I thought they were going to win 13 games coming into the season. I'm still there, despite the fact that they play a really tough back half of their schedule. I mean, you think about the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Bengals, who I know that they're 1-3, but you still got to figure that that's going to be a challenging game on the road in prime time. The Chiefs, the Chargers. There's some tough games in the second half. You have to string good games together. And I like the way that Josh has put these 3 games together in a row, really high level of play. And you could say what you want about the Commanders. That's a good defense. Like, that's a good defensive line that you got to really operate and be on your, as they love to say, P's and Q's against them. But they have been. And Josh is a big reason why I think he's in a really good spot to make a run at this thing.
Absolutely. And listen, Jacksonville on Sunday is not going to be an easy game for a wide range of reasons. But if he performs well on Sunday, then it gets, I don't want to say soft, but he has this stretch where he can really extend his lead, maybe in the MVP race. You have the Giants, who, my goodness, I don't know if Daniel Jones will be able to make it through the entire season healthy. You have the Patriots, you have the Buccaneers mixed in there, the Bengals, who, you said the Bengals should be very good, but I think they made a big mistake by getting Joe Burrow out there week 1. The calf is limiting him. He's a one-read QB right now because of it. He's not mobile. He can't really move. And then after that Bengals game, you have the Broncos, who are a mess. So that's a stretch right there where he can really take a commanding lead, so to speak, in the MVP race.
Is there a chance they could be 10-1, not lose a game in that stretch?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at that stretch, I think Sunday's game's the biggest one. I think Jacksonville, and I know the Bengals are the Bengals. They've been giving the Bills some fits, but right now I like the way that Jacksonville's suddenly playing. I know they're 2-2. But they've been here for a week already in London. We'll see if that works out to their advantage or not. I think of this next stretch of games, this is the biggest one, and not to, be cliche with the Bills, but that's what they always say. This is the biggest game because it's the next one. So, get this one off the checklist, and then probably the Bengals is the next biggest game of those 3 or 4 weeks down the stretch. But like you said, there's some tough ones toward the end of the season as well.
If I were to say today that this day today, when we landed in London this morning, this day is the biggest day because it's the next day for us, that would have been correct. And it was a monster day. Like, we fit in a crazy amount of things on day 1 here in London. So we landed, we dropped our luggage off. We went and we checked out Piccadilly Square, Piccadilly Circle and Trafalgar Square. Took some pictures. You posted some of those. We went and had some delicious lunch. You can give us your Nando's review. If you're coming over, if you're making the trip and you've never had Nando's, they have a couple in the States. Excellent chicken. I had some chicken thighs today. You had a big old chicken sandwich. Delicious. And then we went, messed around at 2:30, and we went and saw Wicked, the Broadway musical in London. It was awesome.
Yeah, Wicked, unbelievable. Highly recommend. I'm not someone that usually goes to theater shows because, again, I know Buffalo has Shays and things like that, but I'm not in New York City a lot. But the prices were unbelievable today, man. I mean, it must have been that middle of the week lull. So we were able to hit up Wicked. Unbelievable performances, great show. Had a great time at Piccadilly Circle. That was kind of, I like how you said it was kind of like the Times Square of London with a lot of different things and really cool atmosphere. Much more reserved. Sure. Yes, I agree with that completely. And the tube is great for getting from point A to point B. I'm really enjoying that so far too. Super easy to use, really efficient for travel.
So I'm going to give everybody a little tip. Become a Shout Bills Insider, 716-528-6727. You will get a 2-week free trial just to check it out. If you're coming to London, I highly recommend it because that gives you text access to Ryan and myself. You just throw us off a text. We'll tell you what our itinerary is for the day. As a matter of fact, I just had an idea. Why don't we just send out our itinerary every single day to the insiders? We'll do that starting tomorrow. And as always, the Shout Insider text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, Litro Law Group. Let me bring up this read. Come on, Ryan. You got to get your foot out of the way. I'm trying to get to the read. You're killing me.
Getting comfortable over here.
The Shout Insider text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, just give Carrie a call at 716-852-1234. Tell them the Shout Boys sent you, and go to litrolaw.com for more information. All right, let's get to the defensive ends. It's been a big week for this defensive line, coming off of a 4-sack, 9-pressure performance against the Miami Dolphins. Daquan Jones was superb in that game.
Yeah.
So I guess before we get to Vaughn, let's give a little shine to Daquan Jones, because I feel like he doesn't get enough.
Right.
And Pro Football Focus, I put this out to the insiders the other day, had him at 7 pressures in that game. He had the sack. I mean, he was a one-man wrecking crew on the inside of that line. And listen, you could say what you want about Connor Williams being out and then going with Liam Eichenberg, but you have to take advantage of that matchup. They did. Von Miller was on the Voncast yesterday. He said that if he was a betting man, if he was betting, he'd bet on Bills Mafia seeing Von Miller on the field against Jacksonville on Sunday. Now, some really funny. Why don't you go through? Because I think you're reading through some of the responses that Bills fans had to that comment.
Yeah, and listen, I'll try to pull some specific ones up here, but the gist of a lot of the comments were, okay, well, I guess we'll see him at the Giants game then. Von Miller, maybe he thinks he's really going to play on Sunday. Maybe he ends up playing. But we've heard this song and dance before. Whenever he does line up, he's not going to have Odell Beckham Jr. and DeAndre Hopkins as his teammates, and he kind of made some guarantees there. Last season, it was that he'd be back for the Jets regular season game, and that wasn't his fault. They went in, they found there was damage to the ACL. Said he'd be ready by the start of the regular season. I don't blame him for that one too, because he did clear 2 days before the Bills put him on the PUP list this summer. So technically he would have been ready to play in the regular season, but he says a lot of things, and he can be a betting man all he wants. But until the Bills say, hey, here's a jersey for you, we think you're in football shape, we think you're ready to go, I'll believe it when I see it. I think the Giants is a much more realistic fit. I don't know if you want him making his first game action of the year when you have him going on a long 8-hour flight, trying to get your bodies right in that regard, trying to get ready for a game, and then get up for a game on Sunday, which will be very early on the East Coast, and then around 2:00 here on London time.
Yeah, and I think that Von's always going to have this positive outlook, and Sean mentioned it today. The one tough part about all this is he's only going to have one padded practice. And he even mentioned it on the Voncast yesterday. Like, when you're getting ramped up for the season and you're going through training camp, you're getting, more than a dozen padded practices out there to get your body right, to get yourself in playing shape. Now, excuse me, is there a scenario where Von Miller can dress and play 10 snaps? Maybe go into the Kingsley Jonathan role that he played last week? Sure. I think that that's perfectly plausible. But here's the problem that bubbled up today when Sean McDermott met with the media. Greg Rousseau is dealing with a foot injury. He didn't practice today. It's the only padded practice of the week. We know what happened last year when Greg Rousseau had that high ankle sprain, and I don't know what this specific injury is, but Sean McDermott was asked a follow-up question about it at the end of his press conference, and he said he's very sore today. So it's a day-to-day situation. I think you got to treat this with kid gloves. You do not want anything lingering with Greg Rousseau. If you need to shut him down for a week or two, as great as he's been, as much as you don't want to lose him, you want to pay close attention to that. So maybe that means an uptick in snaps for Kingsley Jonathan. Mm-hmm. But let's get into this, because a couple scenarios. Greg Rousseau's snap count, I think he's been among the top guys at edge. Him and Ed Oliver have been the two guys week after week that I keep seeing at the top of that snap count sheet. If you bring his snap count down from, say, 55, 60% down to 30 or 25, Do you see a larger role for a Jonathan? Do you see AJ Epinesa maybe moving into that starter's role and filling it, and then having Shaq and Kingsley kind of move it, Shaq remain where he's at, and then Kingsley move into the AJ role? And then you also have the wild card of maybe Vaughn getting into the mix.
Right.
How do you see this all playing out, and what would you do if you were Sean McDermott?
Yeah, so if Greg Rousseau cannot go on Sunday, that creates the problem. And I don't think you give all the reps to AJ Epinesa, which was one of the scenarios you kind of laid out there, Matt. I think you do see a small uptick in the Kingsley Jonathan snaps, but realistically, you're probably seeing a slight increase for AJ Epinesa, a slight increase for Kingsley Jonathan. If Von Miller's ready to go, you want to bring him in slowly. You want to ease that process up and just kind of give him those 10 to 15 snaps in kind of that game one, that return game. So I think you'd see a few players get a slight uptick in snaps, but no one would take over the lion's share of the snaps that we've seen Rousseau taking week in and week out.
Yeah, and this is something that, this Jacksonville Jags offense has been hot and cold. It's been up and down. We're going to get more into that in the preview show. But this isn't one of those games where you don't want to have a Greg Rousseau. I mean, if he's close and you can kind of treat it like the Leonard Floyd situation where they maybe dialed him back a little bit for the 1 week and he didn't really seem to miss a beat, I think that's kind of the play. But listen, you're going to have guys coming in and out of the lineup. If Vaughn can't go, I think you rely on those 4 guys in Shaq, Leonard Floyd, AJ, and Kingsley Jonathan. I mean, he's available, kind of ready to go. And, if Vaughn doesn't go, you just kind of keep him on PUP list and you kind of go from there. We're going to talk about the corner situation here in a few minutes, but let's run through this injury report. Christian Benford with the shoulder, he was limited today. Damian Harris with a neck injury, limited today, which is something to kind of keep an eye on. Dawson Knox now limited with a quad, which is different from the injury that he was dealing with last week. Jordan Poyer limited in practice, so he might be trending in a good direction. What did you think of Taylor Rapp's game?
I was actually really impressed with Taylor Rapp's game, and that was a tough spot to be in, not because he couldn't handle it. He has a ton of starting reps. I feel like the Bills had kind of kept his snap counts down weeks 2 and 3 going into that matchup, but somewhere in that 16 to 18 range. And then you don't have Jordan Poyer playing, and you need Rapp to step up. I thought he did a really nice job. It's just one game. It's a long season, but if he can replicate that type of performance when he gets on the field and gets opportunities like that, he's making a case to get re-signed here and maybe take over a starting role.
Yeah, I really like Taylor Rapp's overall game plan, and I think or play. And I think the game plan too, probably the way they executed in the secondary probably gave Sean McDermott and the coaching staff a lot of confidence in Taylor Rapp. He kind of did exactly what they signed him to be, come in a spot, perform in a big setting. Was it a great performance by any stretch? Probably not. He was solid, right? There was a couple plays where I think he maybe missed a tackle or two, if I'm remembering correctly, on the rewatch. But a situation where this is exactly what you were looking for from that player, and he delivered it. So I think that's a good spot. And if they get in a spot again this weekend against Jacksonville, and Jordan Poyer is not close enough, you can go with Rapp and feel really good about it.
Yeah, and Rapp's, in my opinion, his greatest strength is his tackling ability, Matt, and that's probably 1A on Sean McDermott's checklist of what he wants to see out of his players on his defense. And a solid tackler, a guy that doesn't give up the plays after a missed tackle. And Rapp's not perfect, but he's been among the league's best in that role in his career with the Rams, and he had a really nice performance here with the Bills, obviously on Sunday.
So shout out to the Shout Insiders. We had a impromptu, and this is one of the really cool features of this platform that we now have to connect directly with fans on a more 2-on-1 basis, and almost as a small community too. We're going to start doing these Zoom Q&As. Mm-hmm. So yesterday at the airport, we set it up. We sent out a text to all 300 plus of our Shout Insiders, and we said, we're going to do an impromptu Zoom. Come on in. We'll hang out. You can just fire away with some questions. And it was really cool. I mean, we had 13, 14 people, and I thought ask questions, and we had over I think almost 40 people at one time were in the chat and participating. sign up for a free trial. And we're going to probably launch one of those things up again next week. So you could be a part of that. It'll be a really cool time to join. One of the things I wanted to bring into the show from that was I thought a really good conversation that we had around Dane Jackson and this whole situation that's kind of brewing at cornerback 2, or really cornerback 1 and cornerback 2, and how that's all going to, kind of shake out. I believe it was Dan, and correct me if it was somebody else that asked the question. It's been a long day and we're running on empty here, but he asked a really good question about, like, where is Kair's confidence level at coming back? And is it something where, putting him back out there, are you worried at all about him potentially, having a confidence, lack of confidence, and that affecting his play? And I really like this conversation because Sean McDermott, when he was asked about, Kair the other day, it's like, he mentioned the fact that he was a young player. And sometimes for young players, like, you face adversity. And I don't think we've really spent enough time talking about Dane Jackson and the adversity that he faced this year.
Right.
Like, he's a guy that started last year for Trey White at CB1 with Levi Wallace gone. They flipped and rotated Christian Benford and Kair Elam at the other spot. Dane Jackson was the guy for most of the season last year. And then lo and behold, we get into the training camp this year. The two younger guys, at times I'll play him, and he's asked to slot right back into that role of depth guy. And so I asked Sean about that. And, like, is there anything you could take away from Dane handling that the right way? And he said that's the perfect example to use for a guy like Kair, who probably had feelings about the way that this materialized in year 2. He's a former first-round pick. He doesn't want to be without a jersey on game days.
Right.
And so I think, just from what I viewed with Kair, he's approaching this the right way. I think that he's got, a chip on his shoulder, something to prove. But he's also, if you look at this as an opportunity to kind of learn, to get better, in the time that you get to spend on it, while you're not, like, out there being forced to play every week and game plan every week, it could potentially be a beneficial thing for him.
Yeah, agree 100%. There's a question here from Eric Prince. Do you think that Elam will or might be thrown in for a few snaps on Sunday? Yeah, I mean, I think it's very possible he gets rotated in. He's still the clear-cut cornerback 3, but to Matt's point, last year he wasn't cornerback 1 or 2, despite being the first-round pick, despite Trey White missing half the season. And yet when his number was called upon, he made some plays in the regular season against the Chiefs, against the Dolphins. He's someone that takes the preparation very seriously, and he's going to have a chance and a chip on his shoulder to try to prove that they should have had him starting all along. That's kind of something to keep an eye on there. In terms of Dane Jackson, who we just talked about too, Dane Jackson was dealing with a neck injury last year. He was dealing, I think that affected his tackling a little bit. It probably even affected his confidence in his play on the field. You're not seeing that this year. He hasn't been perfect, but he's been a lot better than what I saw out of him last year in flashes. So I think the Bills do have a lot of confidence in those two specifically. And then obviously you throw a Benford into the mix there. So you have a solid trio of guys, and maybe you're lacking at true number 1, but you could argue that Trey White wasn't a true number 1 at this point in his career, coming off of an ACL injury.
Yeah, the trade conversation is interesting because I do think that he was building some momentum. But to your point, consistently wasn't that guy playing and play out for all 4 games this season, or most of the 4 that he played. Kair's in a really interesting situation this week because Sean McDermott said we're going to have to see how it plays out. He's not ruling out a cornerback rotation with Benford and maybe Elam. Benford's limited today with a shoulder. If that's something that kind of nags him all week long, they might want to limit the amount of snaps that he gets in this game just to try to mitigate things with that injury. And it's going to be interesting. Without Trey White, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, I mean, there's some playmakers. Zay Jones even has had times where he's made plays. Evan Ingram, they got some guys that can make plays on this offense.
Yeah, and they have a running back in Travis Etienne who can make a lot of plays too as a runner and a receiver. So no shortage of talent. The Bills defense is going to have to come out and play at a high level like they have all 4 games of the season. Even in that Jets loss, I thought that they played pretty lights out defense. So it's another tough test. Most weeks are a tough test for you in today's NFL. We'll see if they can kind of answer the bell, Matt.
Just looking at some of the tweet replies here on the episode going out. We're so appreciative of everybody hanging out with us. Middle of almost the end of your workday. Back in look at you're yawning your butt off.
Yeah, I'm losing steam at a high rate here.
I want to look through these questions here real quick. Hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We're kind of away from the computer screen, so I couldn't see the comments as clearly as we usually see them. If you're just hopping in, we are in our Airbnb near Paddington Station in London, where we have tons of plans this week. You're going to want to make sure that if you're in London, you get around the Fitzrovia Bell on Saturday or on Friday night. We'll be doing a live podcast there, but we'll be hanging out. We'll be bouncing around town. Join up to be a Shout Insider. Send us a message. We'll give you our itinerary. We'll let you know where we're going. And then Saturday, dude, we got so much planned on Saturday. We're doing a walking tour in the morning on Saturday with a couple folks that put it together from the Scottish Bills backers. Which is really cool. I'm going to a soccer match, my first ever Premier League soccer match. Not a big soccer fan, but I hear it's an experience. So I'm going to go check it out. We're doing we got to figure this out still, but I think we're doing some version of a Q&A that night, and then we're going on the boat tour that evening.
Yeah, crazy busy day. I opted out of the soccer matchup. You pitched it to me, and I said I'd rather watch paint dry. No offense to the soccer lovers out there. It's just not for me. I can't sit there and watch a whole match. I've tried many a times during World Cup games in matchups, but just not for me. So, I might be out and about with my wife, Joelle, that day, checking out some more sites for a few hours, but we have 2 live shows, one being more of a Q&A type aspect. We cannot wait to see the Bills Mafia. I was blown away at the presence at the airport this morning. We had to wait a little bit to be able to get to our Airbnb to drop our things off. So we were kind of waiting downstairs in that little lobby area. And there was a whole section in front of the coffee shop all donning Bills gear. And then when that group left, there was another group all donning Bills gear. We've seen some on the tube. We've seen some at different spots that we've been out and about at. And again, it's just Wednesday right now. I'm sure that tomorrow we'll see even more than what we've seen. And then as the weekend gets here, it's going to be mayhem.
It'll be mayhem this weekend. If you're not in London and you're hosting a morning party, perfect time to go visit Tops's Carryout Cafe. Grab yourself a breakfast pizza. It is the best deal in town. I would pay $50 for that bad boy. It is. You can always get it for $20. Sometimes there's deals on it. Go check out that deal this weekend. Get yourself hooked up before the big game against the Jaguars, and then start your Slider Sunday winning streak with King's Hawaiian this football season. Earn rewards to redeem for free product, brand swag, tailgating gear, and more. Visit slidersunday.com for details and visit the Tops Deli section and look for the bright orange King's Hawaiian displays. Scan the QR for a chance to instantly win tailgating prizes. Then visit topsmarkets.com/slider-sunday and get yourself some epic slider recipes. All right, he's Ryan. I'm Matt. The voice is going. But Friday, the Bills will be in town. They will host a full media day. We have tons of plans to bring you coverage. And then we're hoping to be streaming the show live on Friday night from the Fitzrovia Bell. We will see you then. Take care, everybody.